Bohemia, 1596. There's that date again. 1662. Daughter of James the Fifth. Sixth of Scotland, and first of England and Ireland. Mother of Anne of Denmark, wife of Frederick the Fifth, Elector Palatine, right? Holy Roman Empire. Palatine is the Holy Roman Empire. Briefly, Queen of Bohemia. Due to her husband's short reign of Bohemia, Elizabeth is also referred to as the Winter Queen. And with the demise of the Stuart dynasty in 1714, her descendants, the Hanoverian rulers, succeeded to the British throne. Right? Now, one of these other joint, I thought this was the one that had MR on it, on either side of her, MR. That MR is referring back to the Libyan script that they found in the ancient map in Nevada. And the word MR, which is the by root for Moor, which is the Libyan meaning for land on the other side of the sea, right? Or before the sea, right? Before the sea, Armorica means before the sea, right? Exactly. So what this shows again is that all of these people that I'm showing you is Europeans, but these Europeans are melanated, and they are all rulers, you see, who have the wherewithal and the means and the ancient connection, right, to the Moorish Empire to be able to come over here to escape the change of the government, where they're going from the Habsburgs to the Hanoverians, you see. So when we speak then of the divide between the so-called Europeans and them, this is where it happened, because half of them was that, and then the other half was on that draconian steeds, trying to bring the bloodletting and the slavery stuff, and they were at war with each other because of that. So when we speak of the Asiatic people, right, or who they refer to as the Tatarians, right, the Tatarians, the ancient Tatarians, again, we're talking about the Asian and the X-Eatic, right, XI. This is a jade warrior from the same time period found in Shinar, what again we now today call China. Again, this is the so-called Olmec head. China is also called Shinar. China is also called Tartary. China is also called Tauran. China is also called Thrace. China is also called Cathay by us. Manchuria, indeed. And then collectively, it can be referred to as Eurasia. So this is what Genghis and these people look like when they talk about the black Tartars. They want to flip it like the black Tartars to the white Tartars. This is the Asians that is descended with us, where we coming from. Going all the way back, this was a lithograph. This is a copy of the painting done by an artist. This is in all jade. This is in all basalt. Alright? So the disturbance with Rome, we kind of briefly discussed, but I'll show you this. Because there's all these stories about how it's born. Oh, wait, before I show you that, this, I'm going to show you, this was an old paint drawing, allegedly by, they say it was Talcott, Andrew Talcott, the dude that did the White House and all of that, but I think it was actually Bembe, of the White House on your left. And then on your right is the money to show you how we was running stuff, or how the empire or the government looked prior to that. This is what they tore down to build the White House or the mosque that we see today. That became, well, first it became a mosque, and then from there, and they shut that down. I'll show that next. Yeah, technically, the Republic of China is Taiwan now. So you see on the money, it says Perennis, which is the father. So if there's a month, think about it, if there's a motherland, there has to be a fatherland, right? So think of America as the deadbeat dad for Africa. This pyramid that you'll read about, that the Egyptologists will tell you about, is called the Saqqara Pyramid, allegedly built by Zoser. And that pyramid is a step pyramid, meaning that the pyramids that became pyramidions, with the pyramidion top, meaning the what you know as a pyramid top at the top, were built after, meaning that this is the prototype, meaning that this, which was the original pyramid that was then set up over there to show the dominion now spreading, you see what I'm saying, was the foundation, which again is why it's in the money. So again, this is showing you how deep it's connected. No, this is the White House in Washington. Before they turned it into the White House, this was torn down. Then they turned it into what became the national buildings all over the world. I'll show you that in a minute. And then that was like a mosque or whatever. It was also a mosque. And then once that fell, the building then got repurposed, built on top of again. And now is what we understand as the White House. This is the drawing from one of the sketches of how it looked prior to the demolition. And this, like I said, on the right side is the verification showing that this is what was on the money. This is how deeply rooted in the country it was, because it was on the money and it was a part of the Congress. But everything flipped. But they don't give us this part of history, because then this part of history shows that we're running the world, really. Yeah, to build what you understand as the White House, which again is really a mosque. Big up to Searching for More. Show you another one. Show you how the Shriners always hide it. Show you all these buildings that you see like this are mosques, or were mosques from the old empire that were repurposed. See this right here? This is on top. This goes further down. This thing is built on top of this. They repurposed this to this. But this was the structure that we used to show dominion over the whole world. That's why all the government buildings on the planet have this rotunda and dome shape. The only thing missing at the top is the crescent. And the Shriners know this. See at the top, it says Islam. It's the president. Because they all in secret. They all running the game. They all know that it's the Moorish Empire and that they been destroying us based upon what we don't know. Look, here go the other one. This right here is the rich Illuminati niggas becoming Shriners. Because all these niggas was the same. all these niggas is the rich, like Bill Gates and these niggas going through the ritual while these guys know what's really up. Because to be this, you had to go through the highest of the Scottish Rite, the highest of the York Rite, the highest of the Druidic Rite, or whatever rite that is, and then you gotta take your Shahada. You take your Shahada by going to one of the government buildings, and they put you on to the real science that you really serving Allah, and that you are representing the devil in the story, and that you can't do nothing but do devil's work in the name of Allah. Like, this is how sick these niggas are. Then you get to go either 33 degrees up or 30 degrees below. If you go below, you get the real devil power and all that other stuff. You get into the lycanthropy and vampirism and all of that. This right here is the rich Illuminati niggas becoming Shriners. Because all these niggas was the same. All these niggas is the rich, like Bill Gates and these niggas going through the ritual while these guys know what's really up. Because to be this, you had to go through the highest of the Scottish Rite, the highest of the York Rite, the highest of the Druidic Rite, or whatever rite that is, and then you gotta take your Shahada. You take your Shahada by going to one of the government buildings, and they put you on to the real science that you really serving Allah, and that you are representing the devil in the story, and that you can't do nothing but do devil's work in the name of Allah. Like, this is how sick these niggas are. Then you get to go either 33 degrees up or 30 degrees below. If you go below, you get the real devil power and all that other stuff. You get into the lycanthropy and vampirism and all of that. The baby eating stuff is light. That's like the doorway into that. That's the little stuff you got to do. That's walking the red carpet. That's why in Hollywood, everybody got to walk the red carpet, because it's all a ritual. Because they're all trying to get that sword above their head. That's why all nations on the earth that have these buildings have them for a reason, because the Barbary powers was in control of those places and built them up from time immemorial, from the fall, based upon the rise of the female pope. Anybody ever heard of the female pope? Why Rome got shut down? Well, they tell you that it was sacked by the Germans or whoever, right? Then they tell you it was the Visigoths. Then they tell you it was the Arabs. And they tell you all this other stuff. We're talking about Rome, like what we know is the Sabaean Rome. All of that. Okay. Well, first of all of the Romans we know are ancient Sabaeans. And those ancient Sabaeans are ancient Ethiopians. And those ancient Ethiopians are ancient Hindus. Right? Everybody got it? On that, they all are Christians, but they're also pagans because they deal with the iconography and all of that. Meaning that the art, like they worship the art. The art is not there to venerate the culture. It's more of a thing where it's used to control, basically. So we'll just switch Vishnu for Jesus, you know what I'm saying? And whatever. So this right here is Septimius Severus, allegedly, who was one of the reformers of Rome, one of the Moorish reformers of Rome. He had descendancy from Carthage. But he still practiced the European practice of marrying enslaved, like I showed you. So his children, again, came out, lighter or whatever. Such as that. So as you see, this is the old school creation. But these are still melanated people. So once the conversion came, And they decided they're going to now bring everybody into that. Everybody that was now Muslim or original had to be converted and brought up the ladder, brought up Yaqub's ladder. See what I'm saying? So again, it was a curse to have the leopard skin and all of that. So these Caucasoid Slavs, if you will, was used as means of war, where other families would sick them on other families to put them out of business. You know what I'm saying? And then eventually force their heir to marry one of them to then produce what we would call a mestizo or mulatto or whatever, and then marry that one to one of their Mameluke slaves or whatever, you see what I'm saying? And then boom, now they're done. And that was basically the practice of the Romans, which is why they got shut down. So like the Rastafarian culture that was brought to them allegedly in the name of Selassie, whose real name again was also Victor, right? They were really just following an ancient rite of the Russian Orthodoxy that Selassie and them dealt with as Greek Orthodox under Blessed John the Hairy, who was what they called the Holy Fool. He was like the Rasputin of the day. He had locks and all of that. He was, he lived off the land, he smoked weed and all of that. So, yeah, Victor the First. So, in that, he was a part of the court. So Selassie and them, I think, also knew that, and that image, when they saw it, they knew that it was an aspect of the court that they could manipulate to be able to deify him, to give him greater standing in the world. Understand? So you see, all of Christianity has always been fostered by melanated people from that particular Roman line or whatever. But the rubber met the road when they got so decadent that they had to get shut down. But in shutting them down, it was a period over a long period of time. So the succession of the German invasions that happened, but that happened over a succession of time. The political infighting, assassinations that happened, but the straw that broke the camel's back that they never speak about, which is why, again, they set up the intersystems to get rid of information like this, was the establishment of the female pope. So her name was Pope Joan, like Joan of Arc. Pope Joan, 855, 857, was, according to legend, a woman who reigned as pope for a few years during the Middle Ages. Her story first appeared in the chronicles of the 13th century, subsequently spread throughout Europe. The story was widely believed for centuries, but most modern scholars regard it as fictional, because all of them is remixed. Most versions of her story describe her as a talented and learned woman who disguised herself as a man, often at the behest of a lover. In the most common accounts, due to her ability, she rose through the church hierarchy and was eventually elected pope. Her sex was revealed when she gave birth during a procession, and she died shortly after, either through murder or natural causes. The accountants state that later church processions avoided this spot, and that the Vatican removed the female pope from its official list and crafted a ritual to ensure that future popes were male. In the 16th century, Siena Cathedral featured a bust of Joan among other pontiffs. This was removed after protests in the 1600s. This is the bust, right? So this is what they say she looked like, right? This is what they say she looked like, right? Repeat. At the side of this statue, on the right side, around the corner, where this hand is pointing, is this. Do the knowledge, the bronze statue. See what I'm saying? Look, when you look at it on the angle where this hand is pointing, on the other side is pointing to this. The only other female in the whole joint. This is Joan, the black woman. That's what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that the statue, the white statue they got that they took down in 1600s, they just put up in the church, was pointing to the real joint. You know what that mean when it's in bronze? You know what that mean. And that's a Moor. It's a Moorish woman. See that, right? So now look, this here goes verified in history. While the Christian world was enveloped in darkness and all learning, save that of the worthless metaphysics and Ptolemaic theology, see, all of this whack stuff, had been banished from the minds of men, meaning that they just was done. While England was distracted by Danish and Norman invasion, this is black people invading black people, and the barbarous monks defied the authority of their kings in the very presence of the throne, while Charlemagne was desolating the provinces of Germany by sweeping the merciless protection, while the ecumenical councils were performing the virtues of celibacy and the anality of images, while the populace of Rome was amused by the scandal of a female pope. During this period of intellectual stagnation, the Moorish princess of Spain and Sicily, alone among the sovereigns of the West, kept alive the sacred fires of art, science, and philosophy. They instituted pederasty as part of the Catholic Church after this period of Joan. So when you say why they always having sex with the little boys, they figured they would replace the women with the boys. And then always rape the girl as part of the ritual. See what I'm saying? To defy Joan. Evil. I don't even think it's patriarchal, matriarchal. It's just evil. You know? But it's definitely a part of the Ignatius Loyola tradition that they eventually evolved it into after the fall of the Moors. You see, this is why we all messed up now and why they hate women. Because they was ruled over again by one of the Ethiopian descendants who basically posed as a dude, which was part of the Attis tradition, right? And was able to get her way all the way up, and then started trying to do stuff to get them out of the stagnation that they was in. Because Rome at this time was basically broken up into the different kingdoms that we talk about. The Normans wasn't even Roman. They was coming from France. And they, again, by way of, they were melanated too. All of these are black people we talk about. None of these people are white. These are the aspects of history that they, again, flip and then turn into something else to throw us off on what's really happening. Because, again, when we talk about the establishment of the Moors and what we did, everybody's still living off it. So when we talk about the Spanish that we was fighting against and all of that, we're talking about people like this, who was the father of Ferdinand and them. Caucasians was just used as, cannon fodder, bartering, making races of people, you know what I'm saying, cleaning out caves. Like, they had no jurisdiction over nothing. You understand? Because they had no history outside of that which was given to them. And certain nations throughout the years or centuries exploited that. But it was always known where and what they was capable of based upon the nature that they were brought into and how people have been trying to figure out what to do with them, all of that. So they took that as a form of power and associated themselves under the names of the very things that was not theirs. You understand? And then created orders that were financed, again, by Moors who were disenfranchised with the greater empire and what was going on, whether they were from Europe or Asia or wherever. Yeah, Normans were Normans, meaning black men. All of that is repentance for. Because remember, I'm telling you, these Ethiopians were also at one point Indians and were kicked out by the Mauryan and the Chandragupta dynasties and all that. So once they wound up in Liabella and then took over and then adopted the Ethiopian term and then under Azanias to establish the Christian nation, they basically just took their Indian thing and made it Coptics. You get what I'm saying? And then used that to establish colonies in Europa, what we call Italy. And then whoever became king of Italy became Holy Roman Empire. Well, whoever became king of Italy and then was crowned in Germany became Holy Roman Emperor. That's why Victor would always be in holding the scepter and the ball and all of that. And had the Queen Elizabeth and them bowing to him because they knew the deal. Basically, it seemed like he wanted to establish another state in retaliation for the whole League of Nations thing, trying to dead that, stop the prophet from coming up. And so he decided to get Mussolini and them, Franco, and eventually Franco and them, to establish or help establish a state via Russia through the Tsar, through his relationship with the Tsar and them, and then got them basically to invade his own nation because he wasn't set to be king at the time. And then in that, he goes to England, basically gets crowned Holy Roman Emperor, and then as Victor orders Britain to help Ethiopia, you see what I'm saying? To help establish a waypoint, which would be Eritrea, which is what he wanted anyway. Because the Eritreans were basically Italians, and those Italians at Guineas at the time were all black. Were basically Sicilians and you know, what they call Italians. That's why no Italians and none of these people was considered white until after 1945, 1950. You understand? The whole thing changed. The reason why we don't understand more today, big up to Brother Alexander, brought this back up in my mind. The Elilio Antonio de Nebrija, the Grammatica de la Lengua Castellana, right? The E Justidias Nebrisensis, right? From 1492 to 1992. The original context of this comes from this aspect, and then I'll explain. But people of the world began to hide remaining Moors, so this elite army could not find them. According to the expression connectors, I hate languages, monarchs were forced to surrender some of this jurisdiction to local villages, towns and districts. This is them taking the power from the original black monarchs eventually. The French expression connector tells the man, the women, the children were gifted in hiding on any terrain, and the Vatican was receiving reports that Moors were arriving in their homelands. So a new department was formed in which are the policemen of today. This was the domestic jurisdiction, so the international violators had to have domestic charge, had to have a domestic charge. Read that again. So a new department was formed, which are the policemen of today. This domestic jurisdiction, so the international violators had to have a domestic charge. The Vatican was ready for the common people to take over because they came up with one. In Latin, renegade, meaning again denied. And the jurisdiction of the new formed police department was ready to operate. It started as KOP, cop, and advanced to CAP, meaning to catch, seize, take, steal. But it was the Spanish with their new given language that really perfected the system. I after 1492, when they decided that they was going to be Spanish in them, when I say they, I'm talking about the Spanish, and at the time, those Spanish were people like this dude, Sancho the First, 925, King of Pamplona, who was the father of the Navarro house, right? Italian, Roman, claimed to be from the original house of Astara, or what they call Austria, because that is as far as the Moors went when they took over everything. They let the Austrians rock because they was Germans, and the Germans through the whole was down with us because we are the ones that allowed them to reestablish their titles to establish the Holy Roman Empire. And they dealt heavy with white slaves. And they didn't like the Spanish for what they did to the Moors, so we was always cool. That's why in Django, Dutch Schultz was the German who came from Germany to help him, because he realized that he was really Heinrich, and then Brunhilde was the female, meaning the king and the queen, that were kidnapped and brought to America as slaves. See? So Sancho and these people helped establish the Castilian language and merged the House of Castile and Aragon, which was then fomented in the language, in which now Moor was now not going to be seen as a king or queen or all of that. It was going to be used as an adjective to describe something. You understand? And this was then a language enforced on any Moors who were then kidnapped or forced into slavery under this Spanish regime. And those Moors that weren't were the free Moors who was against all of that, who fought against the army that was then sent out on behalf of the Vatican to get rid of them. Those are the Holy Inquisitors. Understand? These are the Jesuits. These are the police. These are the lawyers. These are the doctors. That's all of these people. Because this is the oath they're really taking. And the English version of the oaths that they're taking are really always, there's always a Castilian translation in that. Because it has to be, again, see, it has to be taken from international to a domestic charge. That's why they're able to trade the bonds internationally. You understand? Exactly. Funneled through the Fraternal Order of Police, who promote the idea of qualified immunity. You understand? So they almost have it where getting rid of original men and women is a matter of national security, because this is the jurisdiction that they're putting all this under, really. And allegedly what this dude is allegedly fighting against, which is whatever. But in our context, these ancient things are used today in finance and law to keep us locked down. On your left is the ancient plate, cuneiform plate from, in Sanskrit, from, it's not really Sanskrit, but closest thing to it, Sanskrit from ancient Sumeria, that denoted a certain amount of money. Basically, it was a bond. And then on your right is the original series or image of the original series bond for the Treaty of Versailles. You tell me if you see something familiar.